I think this newer version of Canelo, utilizing his experience, his skill set, and just knowing that he's been there, knowing that he can do it, and trying to take these younger guys into deep waters, I think is a good stance for him to take in this fight to be successful.
Welcome, fight fans, to Boxing Scene's top stories only on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. I'm George DiMattelis. A quick reminder to download the ProBox TV app, where apps are available to get the full ProBox TV experience, which includes picking the brains of our world champions. We have Chris Algieri, and we got Paulie Malignaggi joining us here on Top Stories. All right, champs, we are about 24 hours away from that big fight between Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga. This is a huge fight for Edgar Berlanga, the biggest fight of his career, and he is certainly taking in the Canelo experience. And for Canelo, well, it's not, I wouldn't say ho-hum, but definitely he has been here before. He is very calm and relaxed ahead of the fight. So, Chris, let me ask you this. What does Canelo have to do to maintain the belts here?
Well, I think Canelo's got to beat Canelo. He's got to go out there and, he's shown in the past that his ability to deal with these younger, bigger, taller guys is exceptional. He picks his spots a lot more. We're looking at a different version of Canelo Alvarez as of late. The guy that fought Jaime Munguia last May, super calculated, setting up his punches very, very, very beautifully. Throws less and less punches. Not very active, getting less active as the years go on. But his precision is going up. He's picking his spots well. He's setting up his punches really well, and it really looks like he's just out experiencing these guys. He's got so much experience, he's got such a deep bag of tricks, and he sets things up. He stays so aware, stays so calm. You saw that in the Munguia fight. Munguia came out fast and was boxing really well early on. I was really surprised with how technically proficient and aggressive he was early on, and he was winning some of those rounds. But you could see Canelo in there just picking his spots, rolling with shots, not taking anything big, analyzing the data, collecting the info on his opponent. And then when he started rocking and rolling, I mean, it was all Canelo after that. So I think this newer version of Canelo, utilizing his experience, his skill set, and just knowing that he's been there, knowing that he can do it, and trying to take these younger guys into deep waters, I think is a good stance for him to take in this fight to be successful. And you got a guy like Berlanga. This is his first world title fight. This is his first mega fight. He's a big power puncher. So Canelo probably will think to take him deep. But at the same time, he's got a very different mindset that he did in the Munguia fight. I think I even saw an interview where Canelo said that he actually carried Munguia a little bit toward the end of the fight. I don't see that in this fight. I think he's going to go for it and look to try and get that 40th KO in his career.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I believe Canelo wanted to carry Munguia, but I'll say this: he does slow down late in fights, and I think that's why it's important for him to sort of not so much get off on the right foot, because he does start slow as well, but he breaks you mentally with the way he walks you down. I've been noticing that since probably the second Golovkin fight, where there's a little bit less activity, champ, like you said, with his hands, less punches, but you're coming forward and you're presenting yourself as a body in front of somebody who's in position to punch all the time. And of course, when the guy does that and he knows how to punch, it sort of can mentally discombobulate you a little bit, especially if you haven't been at that level, especially if you haven't been there in general. I think Munguia was one of those situations where Munguia actually had fought at a much higher level than Berlanga has ever fought. But Munguia still hadn't been at the Canelo level, right? The Canelo experience. And so, he came out shooting too fast all at once. Even Berlanga actually mentioned that in the interview with him, where sort of may have overtrained, or he was just too excited. So it's interesting to me. How do you approach this if you're Canelo? I think you just approach it in the fact that this guy hasn't been here before. You stress him with your presence the way you know how to do. You get to the body at close range and break him. And between getting to the body at close range, mentally stressing, and the crowd being crazy, it's already a big psychological destruction happening. You got to be mentally very strong in order to, deal with that. And a lot of guys who have sort of too much respect for Canelo, or almost are a little bit intimidated by Canelo. They let him walk them down too much. You know what I mean? Where they get into a habit of where he's going to hold his ground. Okay, I'm going to give ground. He's going to hold his ground. I'm going to give ground. I mean, get off some punches, but I'm going to give ground. At a certain point, you've got to have Canelo hesitating off your feints. You got to have Canelo sort of covering up and losing position a little bit. If Canelo's not doing any of that, that means his pressure is going to be consistent. And I think that's what Canelo's going to want to be doing. He wants to have that consistent pressure, put himself in punching position, cut off the ring, no matter what Berlanga's doing, not let anything land too cleanly, but at the same time keep pressing him, have that left hook to the body going, and then little by little pick it up the way he did in the Munguia fight.
All right, Paulie. So let's talk about Berlanga, because this is, you mentioned it, first time, big lights, huge stage, world titles on the line. How does Berlanga win this fight?
Berlanga has been talking about the jab. I've just never seen Berlanga know how to use the jab on its own in a deceptive enough way to where, okay, he's going to establish distance with the jab, and then he's going to, be able to leverage the power shots when he wants to use them and when he chooses to. Because the thing about knowing how to use your jab is that jab is a deciding factor in when it's going to be time to trade and when it's going to be time to just sit at center ring and box and control the ring from the outside. That's what a good jabber knows how to do. If you tell me you're going to control the fight with the jab, it's not necessarily just the jab. It's that you're dictating when it's time to fight and when it's time to sit on the outside and box in that middle gear where you're controlling the action. So does Berlanga have a deceptive enough jab? I mean, he's been talking about using the jab, right? So he says people don't use the jab enough against Canelo. That's what he says. So, but we've never seen that kind of jab in Berlanga's arsenal. And again, Canelo's going to be bringing that kind of pressure. So are you going to be able to offset that pressure Canelo brings, that positioning pressure where he's in position to always be dangerous and feel dangerous and get those shots in on you, those body shots in on you? Are you going to be able to use that deceptive enough jab? I'm not quite sure. That would sort of be the plan for a guy like Berlanga who's that tall. So in that way, when he does want to let go of the power shots, he can leverage them with more power because the jab is setting up the proper distance to be able to throw those power shots with the proper, muscle behind them. You're not smothering them because Canelo's too close. You're able to land them because you're disguising them behind the jab and behind feints and whatnot. And then of course, off of that, you suddenly have you could create an opponent who's suddenly hesitating to bring his pressure or biting on those feints and sort of, giving you that tighten up off your feints, and you can step around and whatnot and sort of control the tempo. Now we're talking about a type of boxing that really we haven't seen Berlanga do. I mean, but he's of the height. He's talking like that's sort of the way you're supposed to fight Canelo, where he can, he really started talking about the jab. So when you start talking about the jab and you bring Berlanga's height into the picture, yes, Berlanga's a power puncher, but he hasn't really shown that kind of power at this level, or even at the level below this at this point. There came a point in Berlanga's career, and it was much lower than this level, where he stopped getting those destructive kind of knockouts, those scary kind of knockouts. And he's sort of a guy who stops you because he beats you into submission. Two things you're not going to do to Canelo. It's probably tough to knock him out in general because he's got a great chin. And number two, it's tough to beat him into submission. He's going to stay there the whole time. If Bebo wasn't beating him into submission, nobody's beating him into submission. Canelo will hang around either way. So that's why the whole 6-round KO thing was a little bordered on a little bit on the ridiculous with Berlanga talking about that. But I think Berlanga has to stay disciplined for all 12 rounds, and he's got to have that kind of game plan. I just don't know that I know for sure I haven't seen that yet from him, even against lesser fighters, let alone against this level of fighter. So I don't know if he has that in his arsenal. I'm sure they've worked on a lot of things with Mark Ferrer, who's a very good trainer. But this is put up or shut up time now.
Yeah, to piggyback your point about the jab and the insistence by Team Berlanga, by Mark, and by Edgar about using the jab to get a victory over Canelo and how it's underutilized. There's 4 orthodox fighters that use the jab really well against Canelo Alvarez. Obviously Floyd Mayweather, but that was a much younger Canelo. It was not the same. It's not the same style he fights now anymore. It was Triple G, who had one of the best jabs in boxing. So precise, so powerful, very hard jab, very precise jab. Very underrated jabber is Golovkin. Next is Sergey Kovalev. If you watch that fight, Sergey was winning on one of the judges' scorecards. He was very in that fight, and he was utilizing an active left jab. You being the taller man, fighting well from the outside. Kovalev's another one, very underrated jabber. A lot of those knockouts came. Well, he actually did knock out a few guys with jabs, but also a lot of those knockouts came because he was able to mask his right hand, that night ender, with that hard, stiff jab. So he utilized that really well in the Canelo fight before he ended up getting stopped. And then lastly, obviously, is Bivol. And Bivol Bivol is a much different style of fighter. He's an in and out guy. He has a very active jab. He doesn't throw with with a lot of heat until he's in a position to do it. He flicks that jab out there. He's in and out. He makes you miss, makes you pay, kind of guy. So we see four different orthodox fighters that utilize the jab well, and I think it's going to be a combination. If Berlanga is going to be successful with the jab, between the Kovalev style jab and the Triple G style jab, because I've been in the gym with Edgar, I've seen him box, and I mean box, not trying to knock everybody out, like actually using his boxing skills for rounds. I've called a number of his fights when he was fighting on the top rank ESPN shows, and there are times when he's flashed that boxing ability, and I agree with you, champ. I don't see him going out there and putting on a dazzling jab display for 12 rounds. I've never seen him do that. You're not going to figure that out in this kind of fight. But I can see him putting some hard, stiff jabs on the smaller man, similar to the way that Sergey Kovalev was able to do, and also the way that Triple G did at times, because he got respect with that jab. So if Berlanga can get that respect with that jab early, and then mask some of the other power punches, whether it's the left hook or the right hand, because Edgar has a good left hook and good right. I do believe his right's a better punch, though. He can get some respect, and I think that's where he can find spots to be successful. And keep Canelo at bay a bit, utilizing that height, that reach, but really it's going to be getting respect with power, even if it's a power jab.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. You mentioned Golovkin's jab was a power jab. But I don't know. Golovkin also would follow it by knowing how to hold position off that jab. He knew how to, again, establish his own presence as well. That's why the chess match between Canelo and Golovkin was also so good, because Golovkin's power jab also consisted of him maintaining that presence in front of you. Berlanga, I don't know if he has that calmness to really be able to stay in front of you at a proper distance and be defensively responsible and not lose his mind at that close range. Also, if you talk about the Bivol jab, that's another thing. I mean, when you talk about that kind of jab, and I know you didn't mention that Berlanga could use that kind, but that when you control tempo with the jab, that means knowing how to jab going forward and also jab going backwards a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Berlanga is the kind of fighter that knows how to fight going backwards on the back foot. To be a good jabber, you got to know how to use the jab going forward and going backwards. So there's a lot of things. Berlanga, I think, is saying the right things, and Mark Frey is saying the right things with the jab. That is a big key against Canelo. But you've got to have a versatile enough jab to know how to use it. Otherwise, using your jab will work against you, because Canelo can counter the jab very, very well if you're not versatile with it. So then at that point, the jab works against you because you don't have a good one.
Well, that was the issue with Kovalev. That's eventually how he got him. He was able to actually finally started timing that jab well. And that was one of the things and that's why I say a mixture between the Kovalev jab and the Triple G jab would be a successful route, because Kovalev was throwing it a little bit at reckless abandon. It was more just like, it wasn't as like you said with Triple G, where he was in that pocket and he was staying so calm. Triple G is one of the best mid-range jabs you'll ever see. That thing was hard. You said he didn't break position. He was also there to throw combinations off of that jab. He was very good at setting up his combinations with that mid-range jab, closing distance and maintaining position. Kovalev not so much. He was a rangy guy, tall, long, big right hand. Hit you on the end of that punch, you're going away. That's just what Kovalev did. I mean, he had that crusher K crusher power. But he had to hit you on the end of the punch, which is why his jab was such an important weapon. That's where I feel like Berlanga really needs to get that respect from Canelo, is let him feel his size and his power, and I think he can do that on the end of his punches. Well, if he's going to be successful, I would think he would need to do it on the end of the punches, not standing right in front of Canelo.
Yeah, Edgar Berlanga spoke to us here on ProBox TV. You want to check out that interview on our YouTube channel, and he said he has to be great for 36 minutes, not 35 or 33, 36 minutes. We'll see if that is the case. And of course, if it happens, whatever happens in that fight, we will have you and keep you updated here on Top Stories. Also, don't forget, scan the QR code, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel after the Canelo and Berlanga fight, big fight breakdown. We will hear from you all live. We want to hear what you have to say. Leave us your comments as well as we get post-fight reaction on Big Fight Breakdown. Wednesday night fights coming up October 9th here on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. Looking forward to Edgar Berlanga versus Canelo Alvarez on September 14th at just about 24 hours time. And we're going to have that reaction here on ProBox. I'm George DeMatteis. This is Boxing Scene's Top Stories.
He's the pride of Guadalajara, the Mexican maestro, the unified super middleweight champion of the world, Canelo Alvarez. His challenger, undefeated knockout artist and pride of Puerto Rico, Edgar
versus Berlanga, plus Lara versus Garcia. Saturday, September 14th, live on PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, October 9th. Chris, Primetime Colbert, and Omar Super Salcido step into the ring for what is sure to be a barn burner. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at ProBoxTV.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
Don't miss evenly matched, high-action fights. Wednesday Night Fights on ProBox TV. Scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play.